All right, we're live here on Friday night. I want to talk about the best nutrient for your back pain and your herniated discs, and this is me right here. We have a program and a procedure that is 10 steps that over the last 25 years I've developed as a result of something that happened to me. Most people know that, but I just want to throw that out there. At the Illinois Back Institute, we treat some of the worst back pains. Sciatica, bulging disc, herniated disc, degenerated disc, things like that. And we've had several studies published. And to me, science is very important, especially when it comes to back pain and nutrition, because there's a lot of statements that people make about how effective certain nutrients are, but it's based on opinion or their opinion, but it's not always based on science. So when I look at how to solve a problem, I go to PubMed.gov, which is where our science is in the database. We've been published in medical journals, and PubMed.gov is the database for the National Institute of Health. And so when I'm looking for information about a product, websites are important, but at the same time, science is probably more important, because what does the science say about what is going on? Now, there's a study that I came across, not recently, this is a while ago, that talks about the benefit of glucosamine sulfate and chondroitin sulfate. And the study is glucosamine chondroitin sulfate supplementation to treat symptomatic disc degeneration, although technically the patient had a degenerated disc and a herniated disc. And it's really about the rationale of why it's effective and what they did. If you go to PubMed.gov, you can type it in there and this will come up. This is the research. And they used some images, and the images are there as well. But it's a great study, and it really gives good information about both the effect that glucosamine can have on the disc and how they identified whether or not the glucosamine was working. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the disc because it'll help you better understand what they did in the study. And there was a study that we did in 2017 that was similar, and I want to talk about that a little bit because that was sort of instrumental in us solving back pain and solving back problems that in the past really didn't resolve. They wouldn't go away. So a typical spine looks like this. 24 vertebrae between the head and the hips. The vertebrae are the bones. In between each bone there is a disc. And this study was about the disc. And this study was about what happened to the disc. And this is a good one, so I really want you to get this. So 24 vertebrae. In between the vertebrae is the disc. The spinal cord then runs down through the inside of the spine. But this research was really about the disc. The disc is a lot like a jelly donut, in the sense that the outside of the disc, there's a thick material. I mean, most of you have heard this before, but this is important. And inside the disc, there's a jelly-like substance. And the jelly-like substance gives stability to the disc. When the jelly is healthy, the disc is healthy. And what that means is the disc is a lot like a tire, in the sense that when you have the proper amount of air in the tire is stable. The same thing with the nucleus. When you have the proper amount of fluid in the nucleus, the disc is stable. But what happens sometimes is, due to repetitive stress, progressive overloading of the vertebrae, or compression of the disc, the nucleus will start to dry out. And that leads to the tearing of the annulus. It leads to the bulging disc, the herniated disc, the extruded disc, and you can see all this on an MRI. And technically, a healthy nucleus will look like this. So a healthy nucleus you can physically see on an MRI. You can see how well hydrated it is. The more hydration in the disc, the more stable the disc. We did a study in 2007. And in our study, and this is independent of the glucosamine sulfate, but the concept is the same, because I want you to get this, because it changed everything for us, and this supplement helps change a lot of lives as well. So in 2007, what we did is we had 8 patients that we did an MRI, we performed one of our treatments, and we did another MRI. And what we were looking for is we were looking to see if we could get an increase of flow of oxygen and nutrients and hydration into the nucleus. So we were analyzing the nucleus to see if the nucleus changed. And the goal was to try to get changing of the nucleus so that it would get more hydrated. You could physically see that. So we had 8 patients that had chronic back pain, severely degenerated discs, herniated discs, and had tried other treatments and did not get better. They came in, we did an MRI, we did a treatment, and we did another MRI. And what we did is we compared the 2 MRIs. And what we were looking for was rehydration of the disc. And what we found after one treatment is we could get fluid to flow into the disc. And at the time we were working with a researcher, and he said, well, if it happened one time, you don't know what that means if you do it more than one time. So what you really have to do is put those 8 patients through 30 treatments and to see if you get more than the 25%. Because if it's the same 25%, then nothing really happens. It just, maybe it comes and goes. So what we did is we put 8 patients through our treatment to identify if we could get an increase in hydration. Our goal was an increase in hydration. And the radiologist that we had read it didn't think much of rehydration. He thought, well, big deal. Not going to change anything. So we put the patients through 30 treatments, and we found that we could get an increase beyond the 25% up to 80% in some patients, rehydration of the disc. But when I called the researcher, he said, you got more rehydration, but that's not as important as what I found on the 3rd MRI, because we did a 3rd MRI after 30 treatments. He said, the bulging discs and the herniated discs are going away. So this rehydration process has something to do with creating health in the disc. This is what we identified in 2007. Now we've done many studies since then that validate it, and one recently with 1,200 patients that needed surgery. But our goal was to eliminate, our goal is really to rehydrate the disc, but what we found was we could eliminate the degenerated disc, or the herniated disc. And the degenerated discs would start to get better. So the herniations get better. But what we were also finding was we were increasing the oxygen and nutrients in the disc. You can see it on this one, okay? It's a little darker here, it's a little brighter here. Same thing, a little darker here, a little brighter. And that's how we identified that something changed. So what does this have to do with the glucosamine sulfate? Same thing here, increase in hydration. The goal of the study with the glucosamine sulfate, again, maybe I'll put a link in the description so you can actually go to PubMed and see it, but the goal was to increase the fluid in the nucleus. When they looked at the disc, they were looking to see what happened to the nucleus. So they had a patient that was taking the glucosamine sulfate, and again, the goal was to increase the flow into the nucleus. This is a degenerated disc, so you can physically see it. This is a healthier disc, this is degenerated, this is degenerated as well. And they're both, this one's slightly herniated and this one's bulging. But as the disc degenerates, the vertebrae get closer together, it becomes very painful and very unstable. So what they used in the study was glucosamine sulfate. It's really important for the discs and joints, but it also helps for the healing of the cartilage, and chondroitin sulfate. We have a supplement, the 11 super nutrients, and these are 2 of them, and they're in the 11 super nutrients. But in this study, and see, when I make decisions about anything that I give my patients, a lot of it has to do with the effect that I've had in my back and how things have solved my back problem, and then we've done the studies after that. But in this case, so I go to the literature to see what the literature says. 56-year-old man, 15 years of back pain. He had disc degeneration, which is, you know, we know it's degenerated because it looks like this. Disc degeneration with a herniated disc. And the goal was to see if these nutrients would regenerate the disc, because a degenerated disc becomes unstable and it can become very, 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 very painful. So the patient consumed it and they did an evaluation, and what they found with continued use, not a week, not 1 month, but over an extended period of time, they had the ability to increase the water content inside the nucleus, which is the same thing that we looked at. So it's very similar. A lot of people say, well, Dr. Jeff, I can't come to Illinois. What do I do? We do two very important things. The SPM Active, and I did a video on that, and then the 11 super nutrients. And then there's a lot of exercises and prevention strategies to prevent you from making it worse, because we've talked about this in the past. Too much motion on a torn disc or a herniated disc or a degenerated disc just aggravates it, which is why it becomes inflamed and becomes very painful. So what they found is they were able to increase the water content and reverse the degeneration. And the herniated disc actually physically got smaller. Patient said his back was stronger, and he was 56, and I think that they did this over a couple year periods, so by the end he was 58. He was more flexible, he had less pain, and he was able to sustain heavier loads without any pain. So the chondroitin and the glucosamine sulfate in this study helped regenerate the disc, helped increase the flow back into the disc and maintain the stability. It's like a tire. If the tire runs low on air, you're going to have a problem because the tire is inherently unstable. In this case, the same thing. When the disc dries out, the disc becomes unstable. So the patient got better, and by the end he felt better. Okay, we have the 11 super nutrients. One of them is glucosamine sulfate, one of them is chondroitin sulfate, one of them is omega-3 fatty acids. We have a multivitamin in there. Okay, we have MSM in there. It stabilizes and helps strengthen the discs of your spine. This comes directly from the studies. Okay, so here's the page. totalbackpainrelief.com/11-nutrients. I'll put a link in the description, and I'll put it in the description. You'll be able to see it there. And this is what the page looks like, but the video for the 11 super nutrients is on that page as well. And we have a program where we give you information about what makes it better, what makes it worse, how you need to perform certain activities. There's a little information about antioxidants, super helpful. So take a look at that. Again, to see how to solve these problems. Websites are good, but PubMed.gov is better because that's the science. What does the science say? Does the science say something's going to happen, something has happened? We have a program. Matter of fact, somebody questioned one of the stretches. So the literature says that the stretch isn't beneficial. Sometimes the literature says it's not beneficial for everybody, but it is beneficial for some. Our program, we specifically identify what's the cause of your pain. Certain stretches, certain exercises, certain nutrients are necessary at certain times. We've been doing this 25 years, 26,000 patients. We know it's a 10-step process. You do the 10 steps, by the end you're better. Now if you come into the clinics, you do the 10 steps, you get better faster. Matter of fact, you can get better in a month, where sometimes it takes longer when you do it at home. And sometimes you can't do it at home, but most of the people can get the edge off the pain and start to reactivate the muscles. That's the key. So if you haven't seen this, go here, check it out. That's it. It's Friday. Be careful, be safe, get your nutrients, get your life back on track. We're here to help. So that's it. Have a good day.